History is often told through emperors, wars, and conquests. But Rome's soul wasn't forged solely on the battlefield, it was tested again and again on the blood-stained sand of the arena. This is the full story of Rome's most iconic, brutal, and deeply human tradition, the Gladiator games, from sacred funeral rites to state-sponsored slaughter, from myths of freedom to the silence of extinction. The sand remembers everything. Gladiator combat, a brutal spectacle synonymous with ancient Rome, didn't actually originate within the empire's borders. Its roots lie with the Etruscans, a sophisticated and influential civilization that predated and neighbored Rome. The Etruscans, known for their advanced metallurgy, vibrant art, and unique religious beliefs, held a worldview where the boundary between the living and the dead was remarkably thin. They believed that bloodshed, particularly in the context of ritual combat, honored the deceased. Spilled blood was not seen as a tragic loss, but as a vital offering, feeding and sustaining spirits in the afterlife. This concept formed the bedrock of their gladiatorial traditions. At noble funerals, a practice reserved for the elite members of Etruscan society, two men, often slaves, prisoners of war, or even willing participants seeking honor, would engage in a ritual duel. This wasn't a form of entertainment, a casual pastime, or a mere display of strength. Instead, it was a solemn, sacred ritual, deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs and funerary practices. These early combats were far removed from the organized theatrical spectacles that would later define Roman gladiatorial games. They were steeped in religious meaning, with priests playing a central role, overseeing the rites, offering blessings, and ensuring the proper execution of the ceremony. Families of the deceased were present, not as cheering spectators, but as mourners grieving their loss while simultaneously participating in a ritual believed to benefit the departed soul. The entire event was imbued with a sense of gravity and reverence, a far cry from the roaring crowds and extravagant displays of the Roman arena. The Etruscans viewed these duels as far more than just a symbolic gesture. They were considered a necessary tribute to the dead, a crucial element in ensuring the well-being of the deceased in the afterlife. Blood, in their belief system, possessed a potent spiritual power. It was believed to appease restless spirits, pacifying any lingering anger or discontent that might prevent the departed from finding peace. Furthermore, the offering of blood was thought to ensure safe passage to the afterlife, smoothing the transition from the world of the living to the realm of the dead. The atmosphere surrounding these Etruscan combats was profoundly somber, reflecting the gravity of the occasion. Mourners, clad in traditional attire, gathered around the combatants, their faces etched with grief and respect. Priests, adorned in ceremonial robes, chanted prayers and performed rituals, invoking the blessings of the gods and ensuring the sanctity of the event. The air was thick with incense and the flickering light of torches, casting long, dancing shadows that added to the overall sense of solemnity. The focus was not on the spectacle of violence, but on the spiritual significance of the act, the belief that the shedding of blood served a higher purpose, connecting the living with the dead and ensuring the continuity of existence. The year 264 BC marks a pivotal moment in the history of gladiatorial combat, as it was then that Decimus Junius Brutus Scaever, a prominent figure in Roman society, held what is considered to be Rome's first recorded gladiatorial combat in the Forum Boarium, a bustling marketplace located near the Tiber River. This event, however, was not conceived as a form of public entertainment, but rather as a private ceremony, a solemn tribute to Brutus Scaever's deceased father. 3 pairs of gladiators, likely slaves or prisoners of war, were chosen to fight in his father's honor, their lives offered as a symbolic sacrifice to appease his spirit. The event was not open to the general public, but was instead witnessed by Rome's elite, members of the aristocracy and influential families who held positions of power and authority within the Republic. The term munus, meaning duty or offering, was used to describe the event, reflecting its sacred origins and highlighting its purpose as a religious obligation. These early games, unlike the later spectacles of the Colosseum, were seen as noble, respectful, and even necessary for the dead's passage into the afterlife. They were a continuation of the Etruscan tradition, adapted and integrated into Roman funerary practices, emphasizing the importance of honoring ancestors and maintaining the connection between the living and the dead. The spectacle of gladiatorial combat with its inherent drama and visceral appeal, quickly captured the attention of other Roman elites. They recognized its potential not only as a religious offering, but also as a powerful tool for social and political advancement. Hosting a munus, once a private act of filial piety, soon became a highly visible way to display power, piety, and wealth. The scale and extravagance of the games became a direct reflection of the host's status and influence within Roman society. Soon gladiatorial duels began to spread beyond the confines of private funerals, transitioning to public festivals and celebrations. These events, often held in conjunction with religious holidays or military victories, drew larger and more diverse crowds, encompassing not only the elite but also common citizens, merchants, and even slaves. The games provided a rare opportunity for people from all walks of life to come together, united by their shared fascination with the spectacle of combat. The atmosphere was electric, filled with anticipation and excitement, as the crowds eagerly awaited the clash of steel, and the drama of life and death played out before their eyes. By the late 3rd century BC, the nature of gladiatorial fights had undergone a significant transformation. They were no longer considered private affairs confined to the solemnity of funerals or the exclusive gatherings of the elite. Instead, they were increasingly public, held in prominent city forums and open spaces, accessible to a wider segment of the population. The games began to shift from their original purpose as a sacred duty, a religious obligation to honor the dead, to a form of popular entertainment, a source of excitement and diversion for the masses. This transition marked a crucial turning point in the history of gladiatorial combat, setting the stage for Rome's eventual obsession with spectacle, a cultural phenomenon that would come to define the empire for centuries to come. The crowds grew larger, the stakes became higher, and the gladiators themselves transformed from mere participants in a religious ritual to celebrated figures, their names and exploits known throughout the Roman world. As the gladiatorial games grew in popularity, so too did their scale and ambition. Organizers, eager to attract larger crowds and gain greater recognition, competed fiercely to outdo each other, offering more fighters, more elaborate ceremonies, and greater rewards for victors. The games became increasingly theatrical, with elaborate costumes, dramatic entrances, and carefully choreographed fight sequences designed to maximize the entertainment value. The gladiators themselves were elevated to the status of celebrities, their victories celebrated with public acclaim, and their defeats mourned with genuine sorrow. The seeds of Rome's gladiatorial mania were well and truly sown, taking root in the hearts and minds of the Roman people and transforming the games from a religious ritual into a cultural obsession that would shape the empire's identity for generations to come. The demand for the gladiatorial combat fueled a vast industry, encompassing everything from the training and equipping of gladiators to the construction of massive arenas and the organization of elaborate public spectacles. The evolution of gladiatorial games into grand public spectacles occurred between 264 and 100 BC, marking a significant shift in Roman society. This period witnessed Rome's relentless expansion, bringing with it a massive influx of slaves and prisoners of war. These unfortunate individuals were not merely captives, they became the very lifeblood of the arena, destined to fight and die for the entertainment of the masses. Their arrival transformed the games from simple funeral rites into elaborate displays of power and dominance. These men and women, stripped of their freedom and dignity, were paraded through the streets, their fates hanging precariously in the balance. They were reduced to mere tools of political showmanship, their lives subject to the capricious whims of the powerful elite. The arena became a stage where their suffering was not only tolerated but actively encouraged, a reflection of the brutal realities of Roman conquest and social hierarchy. The cheers of the crowd, the glint of steel, and the ever-present threat of death created an atmosphere of both excitement and dread, forever altering the landscape of Roman entertainment and solidifying the gladiatorial games as a central element of Roman culture. The games were a brutal reminder of Rome's power, a spectacle designed to impress both its citizens and its enemies. The gladiatorial games rapidly transformed into a crucial stage for political ambition, a platform where aspiring leaders could showcase their power and generosity. Politicians and ambitious generals recognized the immense potential of these spectacles to curry favor with the masses, understanding that a well-staged game could translate into significant political capital. They eagerly seized the opportunity to distribute lavish gifts, promising even more extravagant spectacles in the future, each more elaborate and awe-inspiring than the last. These gifts ranged from food and wine to money and even land, all intended to win the hearts and minds of the Roman populace. The promise of future games, with their promise of excitement and spectacle, further cemented their popularity. The people, perpetually hungry for distraction from the daily grind of Roman life, flocked to the arenas in droves, eager to witness the thrilling displays of skill and violence. The games provided a temporary escape from the realities of poverty, political intrigue, and social unrest, offering a shared experience that united Romans from all walks of life. The roar of the crowd, the clash of steel, and the vicarious thrill of witnessing life or death struggles created an intoxicating atmosphere that captivated the Roman imagination and solidified the gladiatorial games as a cornerstone of Roman entertainment and political life. By 105 BC, the Roman state officially recognized and sponsored gladiatorial games, marking a pivotal moment in their history. What had initially begun as private rituals, often associated with funeral rites and aristocratic displays of wealth, were now formally funded and endorsed by politicians and emperors. This transition transformed the games into essential tools for winning popular support. A means of solidifying political power and maintaining social order, the state's involvement ensured that the games would become a permanent and integral part of Roman society, shaping its culture and influencing its political landscape for centuries to come. To illustrate the growing scale and importance of these events, consider the example of Titus Flamininus, who held games in 174 BC featuring an impressive 74 pairs of fighters. This was a significant undertaking for the time, showcasing the growing popularity and acceptance of gladiatorial combat. However, even Flamininus's games paled in comparison to the spectacle staged by Julius Caesar in 65 BC. Caesar, a master of political maneuvering and public relations, commissioned the construction of a massive wooden amphitheater specifically for the occasion. He then proceeded to dazzle the city with an unprecedented display of gladiatorial combat, featuring a staggering 320 pairs of fighters. This event was a watershed moment, demonstrating the immense potential of gladiatorial games to captivate the Roman populace and solidify political power. The gladiatorial games had evolved far beyond their original purpose of simply honoring the dead. They were now potent symbols of power, spectacle, and control, serving as a means for the Roman state to assert its dominance and maintain social order. The state's active involvement in organizing and funding these events ensured that the games would become a permanent fixture of Roman life, deeply ingrained in the culture and psyche of its citizens. This institutionalization of the games had profound consequences, shaping the social, political, and economic landscape of the Roman world. The games provided a regular outlet for the pent-up frustrations and desires of the masses, offering a temporary escape from the realities of daily life. They also served as a powerful tool for propaganda, reinforcing the values of courage, discipline, and loyalty to the state. The emperors and officials who oversaw the games understood their importance in maintaining social stability and used them to cultivate a sense of shared identity and purpose among the Roman people. The gladiatorial games therefore became much more than just entertainment. They were an integral part of the Roman state's machinery of power, a means of controlling the population and projecting an image of strength and invincibility to the world. As the popularity and frequency of gladiatorial games surged, specialized training schools known as ludi began to emerge across Italy, catering to the growing demand for skilled fighters. These schools were essentially gladiatorial academies where slaves and prisoners of war were transformed into lethal professionals, trained in the art of combat and prepared for the brutal realities of the arena. Among these ludi, the most famous and prestigious was undoubtedly the Ludus Magnus, strategically located adjacent to the Colosseum itself. This proximity allowed for easy access to the arena and ensured that the Ludus Magnus remained at the forefront of gladiatorial training. The ludi were typically owned and operated by a lanista, a businessman who specialized in the acquisition, training, and management of gladiators. The lanista was responsible for all aspects of the gladiators' lives, from their diet and training to their housing and medical care. Gladiators were expensive to train and maintain, requiring significant investment in food, equipment, and medical attention. They were not mere expendables, but rather valuable assets that represented a significant financial risk for the lanista. A well-trained and successful gladiator could earn a substantial profit for his owner, but a gladiator who was killed or seriously injured in the arena represented a significant loss. Inside the walls of the ludi, discipline was paramount, and life was characterized by its harshness and rigor. Gladiators were subjected to a grueling daily routine, designed to push them to their physical and mental limits. They trained relentlessly, honing their combat skills and mastering the various weapons and fighting styles used in the arena. The training regime was not only physically demanding, but also mentally challenging, requiring gladiators to develop a strong sense of discipline, focus, and determination. They were taught the art of combat, learning how to effectively use their weapons, anticipate their opponent's moves, and exploit their weaknesses. They were also instructed in the rules of the arena, ensuring that they understood the expectations and limitations placed upon them during combat. Only the most skilled, disciplined, and resilient gladiators survived the rigorous training process and earned the opportunity to fight before the roaring crowds in the arena. The arena was a stage for both glory and death, and only the best were able to consistently emerge victorious. The gladiators who succeeded in the arena became celebrities, admired and revered by the Roman populace. Their victories brought them fame, fortune, and the chance to earn their freedom, a goal that motivated many to endure the hardships and dangers of gladiatorial combat. The gladiatorial games of ancient Rome were a spectacle of blood and skill, a brutal dance of life and death played out before roaring crowds. But who were these gladiators, these figures of both fear and fascination? They came from four main sources, each with their own story etched in the lines of their faces and the steel of their resolve. First, there were the war captives, men and women dragged from conquered lands, their freedom stolen and their futures uncertain. Torn from their homes and families, they were thrust into the arena, forced to fight for the amusement of their captors. Then came the slaves, sold into the arena like livestock, their bodies and lives belonging to their masters. They had no choice but to fight, their survival dependent on their ability to entertain the masses. Next were the condemned criminals, known as noxii, those who had run afoul of Roman law and were sentenced to face the ultimate punishment in the arena. For them, the games were a grim execution, a final act of retribution for their crimes. And finally, there were the volunteers, often destitute Roman citizens seeking glory, money, or simply a way out of poverty. These individuals, driven by desperation or ambition, willingly entered the gladiatorial schools, knowing the risks but hoping for a better life. Each entered the arena with different hopes and fears, different motivations and backgrounds, but all faced the same brutal reality, a fight for survival in a world where death was a constant companion. The sands of the arena were stained with the blood of countless gladiators, each one a testament to the violence and spectacle of ancient Rome. For some, the arena was a last resort, a desperate gamble for survival when all other options had been exhausted. They were the prisoners of war, the enslaved, the condemned, forced into the arena against their will, their lives hanging by a thread. For others, however, it was a chance at fame, fortune, or even freedom, a path to glory that could elevate them from obscurity to celebrity. The roar of the crowd, the thrill of combat, the adulation of the masses, these were powerful incentives for those seeking to escape their circumstances. The promise of the rudis, a wooden sword symbolizing release from gladiatorial service, drew many to risk everything. This symbol of freedom represented the ultimate reward, a chance to leave the arena behind and start a new life. It was a beacon of hope in a world of violence and despair, a testament to the possibility of redemption and escape. The allure of the rudis was so strong that some gladiators even refused their freedom when it was offered, choosing to remain in the arena and continue fighting for the thrill of combat and the adoration of the crowd. Daily life for a gladiator was a paradox, brutal but structured, disciplined yet filled with moments of camaraderie. Gladiators were valuable assets, and their owners ensured they were well fed, with diets high in barley, legumes, and wine vinegar to build strength and stamina. This wasn't a life of luxury, but it was a life of sustenance, designed to keep them in peak physical condition for the rigors of the arena. Training was relentless, a constant cycle of physical exertion and skill development. Wooden swords, heavier than their steel counterparts, were used to build strength and hone technique. Combat drills simulating the chaos of the arena prepared them for the unpredictable nature of battle. Choreographed practice matches, meticulously planned and executed, allowed them to refine their skills and develop new strategies. Despite the violence and the ever-present threat of death, personal relationships often formed within the gladiatorial schools. Bonds of friendship and loyalty were forged in the crucible of shared experience as gladiators supported each other through the hardships of training and the terrors of the arena. Many called each other brother, a testament to the deep connections that could arise even in the most brutal of environments. These relationships provided a sense of belonging and support, helping gladiators to cope with the psychological toll of their profession. The ludi, or gladiatorial schools, were both prison and home for these warriors. High walls and armed guards kept them confined, a constant reminder of their captivity. Yet within those walls they also found a sense of community, a place where they could share their experiences, forge friendships, and even find moments of joy. Gladiators lived under constant guard, their movements restricted, and their lives closely monitored. But amidst the discipline and the danger, they also found moments of laughter, rivalry, and even love. Some gladiators became celebrities, their exploits in the arena transforming them into household names. They were admired by the public, their strength and skill celebrated in songs and stories. The elite of Roman society courted them, seeking their favor and inviting them to their lavish parties. Roman women in particular were often drawn to the gladiators, captivated by their courage and charisma. These relationships, however, were often fraught with danger, as the gladiators' status as slaves made them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The diversity of gladiatorial combat was reflected in the different types of gladiators, each with its own distinct armor, weaponry, and combat philosophy. The murmillo, a heavily armored fighter, was equipped with a large shield, a gladius, a short straight sword, and a helmet with a distinctive fish-like crest. He was a powerful and imposing figure, designed to overwhelm his opponents with brute force. The Thraex or Thracian wielded a curved blade called a sica, a small shield, and an ornate helmet adorned with a griffin. He was a more agile and elusive fighter, relying on speed and skill to outmaneuver his opponents. The retiarius or net fighter was perhaps the most distinctive of all the gladiators. He fought with a net and a trident, relying on speed and agility to ensnare and impale his opponents. He wore minimal armor, making him vulnerable but also allowing him to move quickly and freely. The secutor, or pursuer, was specifically designed to counter the retiarius. He was heavily armored with a smooth egg-shaped helmet that prevented the retiarius from catching his net. The bestiarius faced wild beasts in the arena, a terrifying and dangerous spectacle that tested their courage and skill. They were often lightly armed, relying on spears and knives to defend themselves against lions, tigers, and other exotic animals. The Dimachirus fought aggressively with two swords, a rare and formidable style that required exceptional skill and coordination. Each gladiator type represented a different aspect of Roman martial culture, a reflection of the empire's diverse military traditions. For a gladiator, the ultimate reward was freedom, symbolized by the awarding of the rudis. This wooden sword represented release from gladiatorial service, a chance to leave the arena behind and start a new life. Gladiators could earn their freedom through exceptional skill, bravery, or simply by surviving long enough to earn the favor of the crowd and the emperor. Some gladiators became folk heroes, their exploits in the arena transforming them into legends. Their names were whispered in awe, their stories told and retold around campfires and in taverns. Flamma, a Syrian gladiator, won his freedom 4 times but refused it each time, choosing to remain in the arena and continue fighting. He was a true warrior, driven by a love of combat and a desire to prove himself against the best. Spiculus, a gladiator favored by the Emperor Nero, lived in luxury, enjoying the privileges and pleasures that came with imperial favor. He was a symbol of the corrupting influence of power, a reminder that even in the brutal world of the arena, some were more equal than others. But for most gladiators, the arena was a death sentence wrapped in the illusion of glory. The odds were stacked against them and their chances of survival were slim. They fought for their lives, knowing that each battle could be their last. The roar of the crowd, the glint of steel, the taste of blood, these were the realities of their existence, a constant reminder of the price they paid for their fleeting moments of fame. The phrase panem et circenses, bread and circuses, came to define Rome's social order. Politicians distributed free grain and games to pacify the poor. Lavish festivals could launch political careers, and the people's loyalty was won with spectacle. The games became a tool of mass distraction. As long as the people were entertained and fed, they were less likely to rebel. The arena was the heart of Roman public life. Under the empire, games became centralized. Augustus regulated the number of fights per year, while Caligula and Nero used the games for cruelty and excess. Nero executed Christians by dressing them as mythological figures, then unleashing wild beasts. Emperors controlled the crowd, influenced judicial outcomes, and entertained the masses with ever more elaborate spectacles. The emperor's presence in the arena was both a symbol of power and a reminder of who truly ruled Rome. The games reflected the emperor's will, and the people's cheers could sway life and death. The audience determined fates, life or death. Shouts of "Jugula, kill him," or "Mitter, release him," guided the editor's decision. Gladiators fought knowing a crowd's mood could spare them or doom them. Executions of criminals were stylized into mythological reenactments. Victims played Prometheus, Icarus, or Hercules and died in character. Their deaths served spectacle, not justice. The line between entertainment and horror blurred. The arena became a place where myth, politics, and violence merged, shaping the Roman psyche for generations. Commissioned by Emperor Vespasian in 70 AD, the Colosseum was built over Nero's private lake to show Rome's return to the people. Named the Flavian Amphitheatre, later called the Colosseum, it was a marvel of engineering. Over 100,000 Jewish slaves were used in its construction, hauling stone and building the massive structure. The Colosseum could hold up to 50,000 spectators. Its design included underground chambers, elevators, and trapdoors, allowing for dramatic entrances and surprise spectacles. In 80 AD, the opening games lasted 100 days. 9,000 animals were killed in staged hunts. Sea battles were recreated using flooded floors, and the arena featured elevators, trapdoors, and revolving scenery. The spectacle was unmatched in the ancient world. The Colosseum became the symbol of Roman power and ingenuity. Its walls echoed with the roar of crowds and the clash of steel, a monument to both civilization and cruelty. Emperor Commodus, ruling from 180 to 192 AD, believed himself Hercules reincarnated. He fought in the arena hundreds of times, but always staged for safety. He killed, chained, and injured opponents, declaring himself conqueror of 1,000 gladiators. His reign blurred the line between emperor and entertainer. Commodus's obsession with the games shocked the Senate and delighted the masses. His performances were both spectacle and propaganda, reinforcing his image as Rome's ultimate warrior. Spartacus, a former soldier turned slave, was trained in Capua's gladiator school. In 73 BC, he escaped with 70 others using kitchen knives and cleavers, building an army of 70,000 rebel slaves. Their rebellion shook the foundations of the Republic. The rebels defeated multiple Roman legions using Roman military strategy and discipline. Spartacus's leadership inspired hope among the oppressed and fear among the elite. Spartacus's goals are debated. Some say he wanted to escape Italy, others believe he aimed to destroy Rome itself. General Marcus Licinius Crassus led 8 legions against him. Spartacus's forces were finally crushed at the Battle of the Sila River. 6,000 survivors were crucified along the Appian Way, a warning to all. The defeat of Spartacus marked the end of the greatest slave revolt in Roman history. But his legacy endured, inspiring generations to resist oppression. Spartacus became a symbol of resistance against tyranny. His name has been invoked in revolutions, novels, and films for centuries, a testament to the enduring power of his story. By the 3rd century, the empire faced internal strife, invasions, and plague. Resources were diverted from spectacle to survival. The popularity of the games waned as Rome struggled to hold itself together. The rise of Christianity brought new values. Christians saw the arena as immoral and unholy. Many martyrs were killed in the Colosseum, including women and children, but public executions became less accepted under Christian moral pressure. In 404 AD, monk Telemachus interrupted a gladiator fight, begging the crowd to stop. He was stoned to death, but his sacrifice moved Emperor Honorius to ban all gladiatorial combat in the empire. The era of the games ended, and the sand finally ran dry. The Colosseum fell silent, statues of gods were replaced by crosses, and the memory of the games faded into history. In 404 AD, monk Telemachus interrupted a gladiator fight, begging the crowd to stop. He was stoned to death, but his sacrifice moved Emperor Honorius to ban all gladiatorial combat in the empire. The sand has long settled, the steel has rusted, but the roar never fully died. Today, the gladiator lives on, in films, in stadiums, in stories. What began as ritual ended as empire. This was Rome's greatest illusion, that death could be made into entertainment. The legacy of the gladiator endures, a reminder of Rome's grandeur and its darkness. The arena's echoes still haunt our imagination, challenging us to remember what the sand has seen.